we're just going to get right into it. My name is Angela, as Sydney and Brianna explained. I'm from Ontario originally, but right now I'm a youth pastor at APA Church in Abbotsford. I'm the middle school pastor there. It's pretty fun. I love my middle school crew. They're awesome. It's really great. And I have the privilege of working alongside some of my friends that I went to college with and my husband. Every time me and my husband go to conferences, we went to a few this year, the speakers always talk about how good looking and sexy their spouse is, okay? So he asked me, he said, Ange, are you gonna say that I'm really sexy? And I'm like, you want me to tell them you're sexy? Like, you're not even gonna be there. He's like, yeah, well, everybody else does. Like, why won't you tell them that I'm good looking? So I'm telling you, he is good looking. I mean, I say it anyways, whether you wanted me to or not. But he's good looking. He's a music pastor at our church, which is really awesome. And also our senior pastors, Kim and Clark Moran, they were my youth pastors in Ontario when I was 16, which is pretty freaking cool. So I love my job. Other than that, I love coffee. I love my in-laws. I currently live in their basement, which is really fun. I wish we could have pets, but Darwin said no. And if I had to pick a spirit animal, it'd probably be a unicorn. So that's just me. That's what my in-laws, my mother-in-law, described me to these missionary kids the other day. They came over from Africa. I'm like, why would you say this to them? They're going to think I'm totally crazy. And she said, if I could sum up Ange in one sentence, it would be a unicorn on steroids. I was just like, what? Like, why would you tell them that? These little kids. Man, so this is who they thought that I was. Anyways, I'm pumped for this morning. When I was praying into this and just asking God what he wanted for you guys today, I felt like he told me two really important things. And so if you're taking notes, I want you to bust out your phones, bust out your iPods, your journal, whatever, and I want you to write this down, okay? I like to take notes. I also like to yell. And I also like you when you yell back at me, because words, yeah, words of affirmation are my love language. So please yell at me, because I really like it. But nice things, not mean things, okay? And so I really felt like God spoke to me for you guys specifically, also for myself, but for you guys specifically, and I felt like he said, Ange, I want these girls to arise out of their circumstance, and I want them to arise into their calling. And so that's for you. Today, all day, and all the things you're going to do, the breakouts you're going to be going to, hot topics that you're going to talk about, juicy stuff is going to be great. I feel like that's something that God wants for you today, to sum it all up, is arise out of your circumstance and into your calling. And so when I think about this, I thought about to arise out of our circumstance, we're usually impacted by a circumstance, and during this time of being impacted by circumstances, our status is important. The word status, where I first heard of that word back in the day, middle school life, social media was MSN Messenger. Who knows what MSN? Do you know what MSN is? No, you don't. You're so young. You should know what MSN is, or you guys know. Anyways, MSN Messenger is basically like Facebook Messenger, but like only that, and there's nothing else. Like, that's it. And I lived in the country, so I had dial-up internet. Do you know what dial-up internet is? Like, before, like, you go on your app right now, you hit on Google Chrome or Internet Explorer, and then, like, boom, there's the internet. I have to sit on my desktop, giant, like, square box computer, and then it would make noises for, like, a solid 5 minutes. Like, and just all these crazy weird noises. They were super, super loud. And then all of a sudden, the internet would come up. And my favorite thing about MSN Messenger was you could choose your status. So you had a little like emoji icon dude, and you could choose if you wanted to appear online, appear as away, or appear as busy. And my personal favorite was to appear offline. So I'd actually be online, and I'd be waiting for Justin Fulford, who was my crush, to sign online. And then when he'd sign online, then I'd go online, I'd appear online, even though he didn't know I was appearing offline, and wait for him to talk to me. But that was my version of social media. Now today we have Instagram. Who has Instagram? Yeah, some of you. Who likes Snapchat more than Instagram? Guys, my Bitmoji looks so much like me. I'm so proud of myself. It's really awesome. And I love sending stickers. I realize that when you talk to someone in, like, what is it called? This group? When I'm talking to you on Snapchat. What's that thing called? Our chat? Okay, our chat. Yeah, that. In our chat, why was that so complicated? In our chat, you can send a sticker of you and that other person's Bitmoji. I mean, it's a big deal. It was so cool. So I sent stickers of myself all the time with my emoji and the other person's emoji, and it's like lighting my life up right now. Like, I love it. But usually through Snapchat, through Instagram, we post a little bit about our status being who we are. So if you're dating someone, maybe you have their initials in your bio on Instagram, or your grade, or the school you go to is in your bio. You share a little bit about yourself. Statuses are important. They're of the utmost importance. And I want to share with you this morning a little bit about myself, the impact of my circumstances, and also this girl named Esther, and the importance of her status. I was raised in Bowmanville, Ontario, like I said. I had two older sisters, Valine and Linda. We're all 6 years apart, so we have like massive age gaps, but I'm the youngest. Who's the youngest? We are privileged. I love being the youngest. I'm the youngest. I mean, everyone else is privileged too, but I just feel like we get more. I don't know why. That's just how it works for some reason. Not fair, parents, come on. And my dad's name was Wally. Anyone seen that movie? Yeah, that's my dad's name, Wally. When I was 3 years old, my dad got saved. He became a Christian. Prior to that, he was really heavy into drinking alcohol and drugs. He had a nice big beer gut. And now that he loves Jesus, his beer gut turned into a Chinese buffet food gut. And I still love him. He's like a really short dude too, and I'm super tall, which is funny. And then my mom's name is Valerie. Anyone know the song Valerie? Ooh, Valerie. Yeah, I love that song. It's my favorite. Every time it comes on, I'm like, oh, I want to call my mom. And she was a stay-at-home mom with me, which I'm super, super glad that she was, because if she wasn't, I probably would have got into way more trouble. But so I love stay-at-home moms. Again, you're the youngest, you have a stay-at-home mom, you like, life is great. Like, it's pretty awesome. And she's the nicest person in the world. She plays bass, actually, and sings, and is part of our worship team, and I love my mom. She's super great. So that's kind of what my family life looked like. And then there's me. People used to describe me, they do again still, we had a break from this description for a while, I'll explain why. But people would describe me as this: crazy, obnoxious, really loud, really outgoing, exuberantly outgoing. And you know the song Thunder? Okay, so I'm like that, but reversed. I'm like, you hear the thunder before you see the lightning. It's like you can hear me before you actually see me coming. And so everyone always told me my entire life, "And you're so loud." Like, oh my gosh, you're so loud, you're so obnoxious. And my husband's also really loud and obnoxious. So we're like the ultimate power couple. It's crazy, but it's great. And as a kid in elementary, middle school, I was so passionate about life. I was just a joyful person. I loved homeless people so much. Every Wednesday, me and my family, we'd go downtown Toronto, and we'd put on like a church service kind of like this for homeless people. And I'd come home like reeking like I was in a club all night long when I was in like grade 4. But I was just hanging out with homeless people, and I loved it. They weren't scary. I'd be in the alley, the back alley, like behind where the church was, like playing catch with my cousin, and we'd be chilling with homeless people, just us two. My mom would run out, and she'd be like, "Ange, what are you doing out here? Like, this is super dangerous." And I'm like, "What? Like, no big deal." Like, I wasn't scared of it. That's just who I was as a kid. Like, I love to help people in need. I had friends in school that their family could only afford to pay for the rent of their house, and so I would get all my clothes and anything that I like didn't need or wasn't using or had double of or every same color of, and I'd put it in bags, and I'd bring it to her house, and I'd give it to her and her sister. And that's just kind of like the person that I was growing up. But then, all of a sudden, things changed. My status was joy, was passion, was outgoing, was all these things that describe me. But prior to this, I was impacted by a really big circumstance, and it started to creep its way into my status. When I was about 5 years old, one night we had a whole bunch of family come over and visit and hang out. And so usually the kids, we go down into the basement. I don't know how my parents got these, but I had these like trapeze like rings in our basement. And like we bolted them to the ceiling and we'd like go crazy on them. It was pretty dangerous. But we'd be playing in the basement on like these trapeze ring things. I had like a giant tiger that was a stuffed animal. I feel like when I was a kid, it probably wasn't that big, but I felt like it was massive. And, you know, we'd just hang out down there. We'd play down there like we normally did. But then for some reason, like I don't really know why this happened or how it happened, but us playing as normal, like regular kids, innocently playing, turned into kids playing sexually as a group. And it kind of just happened, and I didn't really realize what was going on or why it was happening, or didn't really know that it maybe wasn't okay. And it actually continued for a few years and years and years after that, all through my middle school life. It happened. And I never really knew why it was happening, and at the time, I actually didn't know that it was wrong and that it was harming me and it was hurting me. And so for years and years and years, as this was happening to me, at some point it just clicked, and I recognized this isn't okay. This is wrong, this isn't okay. But I never talked about it. I never spoke to anyone about it. But all that repeated trauma that I went through that happened to me, it impacted my status. And so this girl who was full of joy, who was full of passion, who was super outgoing, all these things also had another status that was guilt and shame and dirty. And these statuses began to just kind of mesh and form together. And this feeling of guilt and shame for my impacting circumstance became the status I used to dictate all of my decisions. Eventually, high school came. We moved out of the country. We were living in the country all through elementary and middle school, and we moved into the city. And so I went to high school, and I was excited for a fresh start. And high school is gonna be good. It's great. I'm really excited about this. This is gonna be awesome. And then I met a guy. I feel like that's how everyone's story starts with, or maybe just mine. I met a guy, and for confidentiality reasons, we're just gonna call him Seth. I couldn't think of any cool name. I just came up with Seth, so we're gonna use that. And previous to Seth, I dated other guys, and I ended up losing my virginity at a young age and stuff like that. But this one guy, he had his own status and his own circumstances. And Seth was actually brought up in a home where he watched his dad physically abuse his mom. He had seen his dad throw his mom down the stairs and get mad at them, and he verbally abused his own son, and it was just a pretty traumatic, toxic environment he grew up in. And so naturally, when we grow up and are exposed to these experiences and they're never dealt with or they're never coached through, they impact us. These circumstances impact our status. And so Seth, when we got into a relationship and started dating, he started to kind of live out those things that he was shown. The only way he knew how to love was kind of through abuse. And, I'm happy now that I look back, I don't blame him for it. I recognize that it was unfair that he was put in that kind of a position, that it was unfair that he was raised in that home, and it's not his fault. But it doesn't minimize what happened to me and what impacted me. And so Seth became really, really abusive in our relationship. We eventually had sex as well, and it just one thing went to another, and it started, instead of just being yeah, I love this guy, I want to spend the rest of my life with him, because in the moment I was this guy's great. He's awesome. He goes to church. I'm bonus, mom and dad, come on. He plays the drums. He can play any instrument. He can sing beautifully. Oh my gosh, he can do graphic design. He can dance. He was a hip hopper. And also in high school, I was super ghetto. Really, really ghetto. Huge baby fat earrings and a chain and apple bottom jeans and the boots with the fur and everything, okay? I don't know why, but I was just, I loved Daddy Yankee. He was, my favorite. Yeah, I still love Daddy Yankee, okay? I won't lie. And my friend was actually just here visiting from Ontario, and I have this poster of Toronto in my room, and he's yeah, you can take the girl out of Toronto, but you can't take Toronto to the girl. And I was just yeah. So even though I have this really pretty pink shirt on and I look nice, I still got this little bit of gangsterness in me. Anyways, so we lived a ghetto relationship life, kind of, okay? It was cool. We chill outside Max Milk, hang out. It was great. We wanted to start this hip-hop dance outreach crew. So there was actually good things happening in our relationship. But because I was impacted by a circumstance and he was impacted by a circumstance, those things just collided and made a huge mess. Eventually, he started to wonder like who I was talking to. He'd take my phone and he'd look at if I was messaging any guys. If I looked at a guy in the hallway, he'd get mad at me. He actually made up a fake Facebook account to try to trick me into cheating like on him with himself, which makes no sense. But he just wanted to see if I would respond and be like, oh yeah, this guy's interested in me and all this stuff. And it was so twisted. It was so twisted. I was so brainwashed into thinking that I could never leave this guy, that he had me convinced that he was the only person that would ever be able to love me and care for me. And if I dare left him, I would be alone, I would be abandoned, I would not be able to go through life. I don't have lots of time, so I'm really glazing over a lot of these things, but this was so impactful. 3 years of this verbal abuse, physical, sexual abuse. Some of the abuse actually would be classified as rape. And that was 3 years of my life, and I was just like, is this really happening? But I was so trapped. I was so trapped, and I thought I had no way out. And to make things worse, my family life and home life with my parents was awful. Me and my dad argued all the time. When I was growing up in elementary school, I was a daddy's girl, like ultimate daddy's girl. We would go fishing, we'd go snowmobiling, because we lived in the country. There's so much stuff to do. I love the outdoors. So we were always together. And then throughout these years of all these circumstances and different things that were happening to me that I never spoke about to my parents, that I never talked about, I just withdrew. I just distanced myself from him. And I was like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, get away from me. And I just rejected my dad. Just so harshly rejected him. And what I didn't realize was at that time, he was being impacted by a circumstance. That there was actually something great going on in his life, something huge happening in his life. And so our two circumstances also collided and just created a toxic environment. My house was toxic. So toxic, and I never wanted to be there. I hated it. But I'm so thankful that there are examples of girls in this world who, even though impacted by circumstance, was able to keep their status. I can't stand when girls come to me and say, Ange, I don't have a testimony. I don't have a story. I wasn't raped like you. I didn't go to parties and get drunk like you. Like, I didn't smoke cigars like you. Like, I didn't go and do all these other things with all these other guys like you. Like, I don't have a story that I've overcome. And it bugs me because I'm like, man, are you kidding me? Like, girls need to know that they don't have to go through crap in order to have a significant story to tell. I'm not mad. I'm just saying. It drives me nuts. And there's this girl named Esther. Open your Bible if you have it to the book of Esther. This girl, she was impacted by a circumstance, but she kept her status. And I friggin' love this story. It's so awesome. And so Esther was a 14-year-old girl. Any 14-year-olds in here? 14, 15? Yeah. All right. That's you. Esther was a 14-year-old girl growing up in Persia, okay? And her parents died. We don't know why they died or what happened, but her parents passed away, and so her cousin Mordecai raised her. He raised her, took her in as his own, and, she was raised by her cousin, and so cool, fun life, awesome. And at some point in Persia, the king at the time was looking for a new wife. He wanted a new wife, and so the census was sent out into all the land, that all the virgins everywhere were going to come in to this big group, and all the beautiful ones would be picked and get to go, and hopefully they would become queen. So Esther gets ready, she goes, and she's chosen. Awesome. And so her and amongst a whole group of other girls, they are chosen, they go to the palace. And they don't meet the king right away. When I was reading this story, I was like, are you kidding me? She had to go, get this, she had to go through a year-long makeover before she even saw the king. I mean, come on, that's like kind of intense. Don't you think it's a little intense? She had to do 6 months of oils. What does that even mean? 6 months of just sitting in an oil pool? 6 months of myrrh? 6 months of perfume? Like, girl, you would be like so how would you smell after that? Like, that'd be insane. And then 6 months of cosmetics. That part I'm totally cool with. You want to give me 6 months of everything from Sephora, like all those packages? That's okay. I'm cool with that. But she had to go through a year-long beauty process. At 14, a year-long makeover, whatever you wanted, lived in a palace. She had all the food she wanted and 7 female servants in attendance. Come on, who doesn't want that life? I mean, like, that's an awesome life. And so eventually the day came where it was her turn to go and see the king. And so, she's all ready. She's got her full getup on, and she goes, approaches the king, and everyone in the Bible, it says that they were just jaw dropped, just like, whoa, this girl. I don't know, I wonder what her theme song would be, but like, man, like, this girl was good looking. The Bible even describes her beautiful in figure, and I'm like, whoa, okay, come on, settle down. But like, she was gorgeous. This 14-year-old girl was gorgeous, and the king chose her to be queen. 14, who even knows how to be queen at 14 years old? Would you be able to do it? Like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, maybe you're born into a royal family, I don't know. But anyway, she was chosen as queen, and that day became a holiday. Every single person in all the land of Persia were given gifts because Esther became queen. Anyone watch Ellen's 12 Days of Christmas? Yeah? Okay, so it's like you get a car and you, well, not really, maybe chariots. But everyone got gifts, it became this huge holiday. It was awesome because Esther was chosen to be queen. During this time, there was a man named Haman. And he, long story short, he hated anyone who didn't agree with who he was. Haman was appointed as the highest of nobles with the king. He was this really great guy that like everyone was supposed to respect and honor and, show appreciation to. But Esther and her cousin Mordecai, they were Jews. They were Israelite people. And so anytime Haman would go by Mordecai, he'd be in town, he'd go by people, everyone would bow down. Everybody would bow down to him. He wasn't even the king, and everybody would bow down to him. But anytime he passed Mordecai, Mordecai would just stand there. He would not bow down. And eventually, Haman found out the reason why Mordecai would never bow down to him is because he was a Jew, and so he served one God and one God only, and that was the one and true God, and he would never bow down to anybody else. Haman was furious. So furious. He couldn't believe that he would not bow down to him. Like, who does he think he is that he dares to stand and stare me straight in the face and not bow down to me? Like, he deserves to give me respect. He was so mad, so enraged that he went to the king and he plotted this plan. He told the king, he's like, hey, I just want to let you know that there are a whole bunch of Jewish people, a whole bunch of Israelites in your land that will not bow down to you. They won't even bow down to me. Like, I bet you that if you let them live, they'll probably scheme to end up coming at you, creating a war and trying to kill all the Persians. Like, we should probably do something about that. And convince the king to write this letter saying every single Jew should be killed. And so these letters went out into all the provinces, everywhere. The king stamped his seal of approval on it, and all the Jews were about to be annihilated. Imagine if all of a sudden Justin Trudeau was like, we're going to kill every single person in BC. And letters went up everywhere, and we knew it was coming, that we were going to die. We didn't know when or how it was going to happen, but we were going to die. It says in the Bible that the Israelites were mourning and weeping in the streets, that they actually tore their clothes, that they were devastated, that they were going to die. And so Mordecai said to Esther, got the message to her and said to her, you need to do something about this. You need to go and beg on behalf of the king for your people. You're the queen. Your status is amazing right now. It's insane. Like, you're the queen. Like, you could actually make a difference and do something. But Esther said, Mordecai, I can't do that. Like, you forbade me to tell the king that I was a Jew. When I was going through that year-long beauty process and I went to see him, I wasn't allowed to tell him that I was a Jew. And so I can't go tell him. And so she didn't want to do it. And Mordecai said to her, don't think that because you're living in the king's palace and he doesn't know you're a Jew that you're exempt from this. Someone else will rise up in your place. You and your family will perish, and they will die, and someone else will save these people. Who knows that maybe you have been called to this royal position for such a time as this. That's what he said to her. I mean, talk about a crazy teenage life. Like, you become queen at 14, you live in a palace, you get lots of Sephora stuff, and then all of a sudden, your people are going to die and you need to do something about it. See, for Esther to go and beg on behalf of her people, she needed to go into the king's court. And the king's court, no women were allowed in there whatsoever, or else they would be murdered on the spot. Unless the king would hold out his royal scepter to them, with saying that he approved them, they would be killed. And so she was fearful, anxiety to the max, panic attacks probably, maybe even put her into a little bit of depression, just like, oh my gosh, like I'm 14, what do you want me to do? You want me to go and possibly die right now? You want me to save an entire nation, millions of people? I'm only 14! Like, what the heck are you asking of me right now? Are you kidding me? So like, she probably was had lost it at this point, but this was her response. This is what she said to Mordecai. She said, "Go, gather all of the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. Then when this is done, I will go to the king. And even though it is against the law, if I perish, I perish." Esther's status, fierce. Totally fierce. I love this word fierce, and I would say it as a joke lots to my friends and stuff, and it's funny, but the word fierce actually means a feeling or emotion or action showing a heartfelt and powerful intensity. Her status was fierce. She made a choice that she was willing to endure even death if it meant saving millions of her people. She made that choice. She decided that none of her people will be impacted by this circumstance that Haman created, and that she was going to do everything she can to stop it. 14-year-old girl decided, if I perish, I perish. Who knows that maybe I'm here for such a time as this. See, when we're impacted by the circumstances in our lives, like what I said, mine was just like guilt, shame, dirtiness. When we allow those things to impact us, they dictate what we do and where we go. I mean, Esther was an orphan. Her parents died. She grew up in a broken home. Some of you here probably don't live with your parents. She had every excuse to be like, what the heck? Why would I do this? Because your circumstances, the impact of the things you've been through that hurt you, that have harmed you, that have broken you down, they try to convince you to not have this powerful status. See, circumstances, if you allow them to, they will define you. Circumstances tell you that you are not good enough. Circumstances tell you you're not smart enough, not pretty enough. Circumstances tell you you can do better than that. Circumstances tell you no one could ever love you or does love you. Circumstances say you are an overachiever. They tell you someone else is better. They say your body isn't the right size. They make you think that 0 likes on Instagram means 0 love. They have you convinced that if you don't have any followers, it means you're invisible. See, culture's goal right now, media, the world's goal, is to break us down into so many broken pieces that they have us convinced that the only thing that is going to fix us is what they have to offer. But it's not. It's not going to fix us. I decided that I didn't want to be impacted by my circumstances anymore. That I wanted my status to be that of Esther's, fierce, a status of greatness. And when I was 16, I went to Thailand with my youth pastor, Kim, and I saw things that I've never seen before. I saw a man with no arms and no legs sitting on a bridge begging for money. I saw a lady with half of her face burnt off. I saw children without parents. I saw girls in windows being displayed for sex traffickers. I saw people that were homeless, slums, people abandoned, and my eyes were opened. I went to this one home. It's called the Agape home. And in this home, all the kids there had AIDS. And because they didn't have the proper medication and tools, the majority of these kids wouldn't live to be like 20. And I was painting their faces with face paint, and I was jumping on the trampoline with them, and it was awesome. And after that day, we went back to our room. We were staying in this like really creepy yellow motel thing. It had lizards all over it. It was so gross. I was so scared. Now it would be okay to do it because, I've seen it once. But there's geckos everywhere. It was insane. They were like coming out of the lights. When I was sleeping, I'd watch them just walk around the lights. It was creepy. And we made it back to the hotel. And we sat down, we were just chatting, and she said, Ange, like, did you have sex with Seth? Like, did you go and party? I called her drunk one night and left a voicemail. She's like, did this happen? Did this happen? And I just sobbed. I wept, put my face in the pillow. I couldn't even look at her. And I just broke. Everything that I've been through, everything that had happened to me, the trauma that I experienced over and over and over again, just all came out. She's trying to get me to talk to her, and I couldn't even form words. And I couldn't even look at her. Just shame and guilt just rose to the surface. And she wrote me this note. She said, Jesus loves you and so do I. And she left it beside me and went and had a shower. And when I could compose myself, I sat up and I looked at that, and I was like, man, screw this. Like, screw this life where I'm just being impacted and torn and ripped to shreds by my circumstance. Forget it. There are kids dying of AIDS. There are people in this world that have experienced traumatizing things, and maybe I could do something about it. Like maybe if I just got myself together, I could impact this world and make a difference. We went back home after Thailand, and I started going to counseling. After I talked to Kim and shared with her everything that had happened, she's like, man, you should try going to counseling. And I was like, okay. And my counselor was this big black lady. She had gold teeth. And I loved her. She's so awesome. She's so funny. And at the end of every session, she'd ask me, like, Ange, your eyes look troubled. Like, is there anything else you want to say? I was like, no, I'm good. But after one session, when we just came back from Thailand, Seth was waiting for me at the top of the stairs, like right outside. And I don't know what happened to me. Now I know it's totally the Holy Spirit. It was God. But it's just like this power just like came up in me, and I marched to him. And I said, enough is enough. Like, no, this is done. Like, we are over. You have no more power over me. You have no more hold on my life. And I'm deciding today that I will not be impacted by my circumstances. And I'm going to create inside of me a status that is powerful, that is joyful, that is passionate. And I'm going to make a difference in this world. And he was just like standing there. Like, and I'm just like a lion roaring at him. I'm like, no, you have no more hold over me. Like, get behind me. And from that day forward, I mean, I'm not perfect and I've made mistakes, but from that day forward, I decided I wanted my status to be a status of truth. And this is what truth tells you. Truth, which is God, tells you you are good enough. And you're not just good enough, but you're more than enough. Truth tells you you are creative because the inventor of this world, who created this world, made you. That means you have his creativity. The God who is smart enough to build something as intricate and as like remarkable as the human body created you in his image, which means you have his smarts. Truth tells you you don't need to reach for perfection or you'll never need God. Truth tells you you aren't fatherless. You have not been abandoned. Truth tells you you don't have to be a size 0 to be seen. Truth tells us that Instagram likes are just temporary and God's love is permanent. Guys, truth tells us that we owe this world nothing, but we owe God everything. If you have a status as a whole person and not just a status of brokenness, your impact in this world will be unimaginable. It'll be uncontainable. And better yet, you would understand that God's love for you is unconditional. The only way that we can live this life as a whole person and not in pieces is through the love of Jesus. So on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes. She stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall, facing the entrance. I could just picture her. Like anxiety to the max, opens the doors, takes the first step, walks towards the king, just shuddering with nerves. Makes her way to the king, and he extends his golden scepter, which means, woo, I'm not gonna die today, awesome. She invites the king to come and have a banquet in her courts. She also invites Haman, and through conversation, she tells the king everything. I'm a Jew, I'm an Israelite, and you're gonna kill my people. So please, I beg of you, don't kill my people. And he said, I would never. Like, who is this person that is gonna go and kill your people? And she points to Haman and says, it's him. And so that night, Haman died, and all the Israelites were saved. A 14-year-old girl decided to not run away from the impact of a circumstance. A 14-year-old girl decided that she wanted to rise up and create a status of truth, of fierce, of bravery. A 14-year-old girl saved sons and daughters, saved little kids, saved aunts and uncles. A 14-year-old girl made a massive difference. She saved the lives of millions of people. I want you guys to know that you do not have to be impacted and torn down in the weight of your circumstances, but you can choose to have a status that's so fierce that when circumstances hit you, you'll have the joy of the Lord as your strength, and you will make it through any trial.